Hey guys, it's Rogowy here and it's time for another exciting tutorial. Today we are looking at a very common problem, especially with amateur photographers, and that is the problem of blowout. Blown out skies, overexposed skies. Sometimes it is preventable, sometimes it is not. Given the choice, I would retake the shot and get the exposure correct in the sky, if possible, on the first try, rather than having to come back and edit it later. But sometimes, inevitably, you have these times where you just maybe weren't paying attention to your settings, or you got back to your computer, the shot was great, but the sky had no detail. This is especially true in our Canadian winters where we have very overcast skies, and sometimes it's just a gray sheet of cloud that has absolutely no detail whatsoever, and it becomes a blown out sky. Whatever the reason, I'm going to show you how to replace your skies in your photos, and I'm going to show you what this looks like. Now, for this particular image, I'm going to open up St. Paul's. This is from London, England. And this was actually a part of a series of HDR shots that I had taken. So it's not really a true subject of overexposure. It's just that this is the bright shot of the three. So I'm going to use it because it's a great example of completely overexposed skies where you got no detail whatsoever. It almost looks like this was shot on a white background. Like I said, the sky's just completely blown out here. Now, one thing that I want to kind of clear up right away is that this is not considered cheating. All right, it depends who you ask whether this is cheating or not. Obviously, it was not taken together in the photo. Okay, it wasn't, it wasn't taken at the same time or anything like that. But depending on who you ask, this has been done for a long, long time. This goes back to the film days. This goes back to photographers who used to do this with their pictures ages ago. It is called compositing, and what we're going to do is we're going to composite the sky into the shot. And now one thing I want to suggest to you, if you do like this technique or if you do this often, is that you should start paying attention to the sky and looking for interesting clouds. Build up an archive of interesting skies, and if need be, where you have a situation like this, you only have a single shot, you didn't do it in HDR, you don't have multiple exposures. If need be, you've got a backup plan. All right, so let's do that to this particular image. This is an easy one. We have no trees, we have no foliage, we have really nothing sticking out of this building. Just this nice clean break of where the sky is overexposed. So we'll start with this example. Now here's an example of one of the skies that I photographed. Nothing overly interesting. All right, it is simply some clouds in the sky. And depending on how interesting the clouds are on a particular evening, you could wait a half an hour and get completely different clouds. All right, so if you've got nice clouds, you can keep taking shots throughout the night, different directions, north, west, east, south, and you can get a variety of clouds off of one sky in one evening. All right, I also suggest that you go with a wide angle lens. You'll capture more of the sky. All right, sometimes that works better, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes I'll use my fisheye, other times I'll, stick it about 35 mil, maybe down to 24, my 24 to 70, depending on what I think looks good, depending on the sky. All right, but usually you want to capture more of the clouds. So I'm going to drag this to Photoshop, have it open up. Now it's going to load with RAW. I'm just going to go with the settings. I'm going to open it up And now I've got a tab here with my clouds on their own. So the clouds need to replace that boring sky. So we're going to start by dragging the clouds into the same file here as the other one. Now, I should have mentioned this earlier. In this particular image, I have some color toning added to the image. It's actually a black and white effect that I like. We'll apply that after, but first I want to get the clouds looking right. Because the particular area of the sky that you start using as your replacement may not look good, I highly, highly, highly recommend that you use a layer mask. All right, and let me show you why. I'm going to just delete this empty layer. I don't know why it's there. In this case, like I said, super easy. I can just take my magic wand. Where's my magic wand? Oops. Yeah, it would help if I picked the right one. And I got my tolerance about 32. I could go less, but this should be fine. And you'll notice that that nicely selects the sky in this case. I'm going to go up to my clouds layer. And with that selection still made, I'm going to click the layer mask. And as you can see, that is going to cut that out beautifully right off the hop. All right. Now, if I don't like the placement of the clouds within that sky, all right, if I think that that looks too fake or whatever, then what I can do is I can turn off this little link button and I can move the picture independently of the layer mask so that I can replace that sky, or sorry, a different part of that sky in the picture. However, in this case, I'm okay with this first grab here. All right. Now, one other thing that you'll find is that sometimes your picture will have a bit of separation between the building or whatever it is and the sky. And that's because of just kind of imperfections in the selection. In this case, it did actually have that black edge there, okay, where it blew out. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my layer mask part of the layer. I'm going to just add a little bit of a blur. And that little tiny bit of a blur will soften that edge a little bit. All right, just a tiny bit. And then what I can do is I can move that down to allow that to overlap a little bit with the edge of the building. And that should give me a more natural looking blend between the building and the sky. All right, so the trick here is to make it not noticeable or not obvious that you've added a fake sky. All right, so it's very important that you match the contrast and details that you have in your original picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my my cloud layer, and I'm going to adjust the contrast a bit because you'll notice that the building itself is very contrasty. I'm going to bring that up. It's going to make a much more punchier looking sky. Like I said, I added some color toning to this one, so when I put that layer on, you'll notice that it blends very nicely. It makes for a much better effect now that we have the sky in there. If I take the sky out, there's our original, which now looks very boring because of the blown out sky. Like I said, I always like to kind of play with my brightness and contrast just to get it a little more punchier. All right, and just to see if I can get it to be even more dramatic. All right, something like that. All right, one thing you got to be careful for is you need to be careful that the ISO of your picture matches the noise or the ISO of the sky. Because if that doesn't match, you're going to see some serious differences between the noise in the sky and the noise in the picture, and it's going to be very obvious that you added that at a later time. I'll just show you what this actual photo looked like in the end. Should be very close to what I just did. All right, there's the one, and with that effect on, Okay, it's basically the exact same thing. All right, and we can see that we got a nice edge there, no noticeable flaws, and a much more dramatic photo. All right, even without the gradient map added. There's the before. Okay, so like I said, that adds a lot to the photo, and you got to make sure that you, whenever possible, you do not blow out your skies. Let's look at an example where we've got trees and we've got other things going on that will give us a little more of a problem. We're actually going to use the exact same sky. And one little note about that, if you're taking a photo of the sky and you're looking towards it, so the clouds are receding in the distance, you need to make sure that the picture matches that. You need to make sure that if they're going off into the distance and they're bunching up and getting closer together, you have to match the same perspective as the photo. In this one here, I'm looking straight up. All right, so I should match my clouds with me looking straight up. So when I take my cloud shot for this example, I should be looking up at the clouds directly so that it doesn't look funny. It doesn't look like it doesn't belong. All right, let's go on to the next photo here. So for this next photo, here's an example again of one that I was doing as part of an HDR. So this is the bright one of the HDR shot. Okay, there it is. So again, I would never purposely, I'd never purposely do this because I'm always got my my blowout sensor showing me if I've blown out the sky. However, it's all I've got as an example is part of a series here of HDR photos. So once again, I'm going to go with the sky. This time I'm not creating a selection. Instead, I'm going to drag the whole entire sky over to this picture. You can see that it doesn't quite fit because this photo underneath was taken with a 5D Mark III, and the sky was taken with a 7D. I'm going to press Command T. I'm going to scale the sky so that it fits. And actually, for this one, you can get more mileage out of your skies by flipping it. So we're going to go Edit Transform. We're going to flip horizontal. We're going to have it going the other way. All right, so right now we've got this sky that's covering up the entire picture. Doesn't look very good. But now what we're going to do when we got a lot of foliage and we got a lot of branches and trees and stuff, the easiest way is to change your blending mode. So in this case, we're going to change it from normal to multiply. And you'll notice that instantly that sky blends in nicely with the photo, except we've got clouds showing up on the buildings and some places where it shouldn't be. And so we got some problems. So now what we're going to do is we're going to create that layer mask. And I'm going to go to my brush tool. I'm going to make sure my brush is at about 50% hardness. And using black foreground color, I'm going to just make my brush size bigger. And I'm going to paint out the clouds that are over top of our subject. And in this case, our subject is the buildings, it's the wall, it's the grass, it's all these things that should not have clouds on them. However, for the trees, I'm going to leave it because as you can see, multiply blends nicely with the branches of the trees, and I'm okay with that. So let's just get rid of it over. Now, obviously, I'm doing this quick for the tutorial. I'm leaving a little bit of overhang so that it looks like it blends nicely. But if I was doing this on my photo, like if I was doing this for my portfolio or whatever, then I'm going to spend a lot more time making it perfect. All right, I'm just showing you how quick this can be done. And go over the chimney because obviously the cloud shouldn't be on the chimney. And we're getting close there. Okay. So we have a custom layer mask made here specific to the needs that we have for this particular photo. I'll just hide the lower layer. However, you'll often find that you've got this strange blending that happens between the underlying picture and your clouds because of the multiply layer. So there's a couple ways to correct that. What I like to do is I like to go to adjustments and brightness and contrast, and I find that if I tweak the contrast a bit, oops, cancel. I got to be on the actual layer where the picture is. I'm going to zoom out a bit too. If I adjust the brightness and contrast of those clouds, I'm going to get a much more dramatic look. And the blending should be better. All right, because you can kind of see here how that has improved those clouds. Now obviously it's a little bit, actually maybe a lot oversaturated. However, when it comes to a photo that you need to save, because you've got overexposure, you got blowout in your skies, sometimes this is what you have to resort to. And it will give you at least a decent result. Now each picture is different. Some will have difficult parts, some will have water where it reflects the sky. That's a whole different challenge because now your reflection won't match your water. However, in most cases, you can really salvage a shot by replacing the sky with a more dramatic one. In this particular case, I wouldn't say it's fantastic or anything. However, if you look at the before and you look at the after, you can see that that's a pretty huge, or more of a dramatic effect to the overall picture. The sky will often add a lot of punch to the overall impact of the shot. And if you have an overexposed sky, it'll end up looking very amateur. Yeah, it'll basically look pretty bad. Now, same deal here. We could add a toning effect to this picture. Maybe I'll do that just to show you. And I find that black and whites work really good with this technique. All right, so if you do some sort of a black and white effect or a sepia effect or a color toned effect, oftentimes you won't even be able to tell that you faked the sky. All right, it just kind of eliminates some of that, visible difference between the sky and the picture. All right, so there you go. That's the end of that. Hopefully you enjoyed that, and hopefully it saves your butt if you have a few photos that were overexposed. Use that technique, like I said. Don't overuse that technique, and really try not to make it look fake, otherwise people will call you out on it. But it is a very good technique to save those skies. Anyways, hope you enjoyed that. Make sure to check out the other tutorials and post any comments you may have to make this tutorial better. Thanks a lot. Till next time, take it easy.